Hello, welcome and thanks for joining us. We're in the lofty surroundings of the Eclipse building in the heart of Bristol. And Bristol, like many other parts of the country, is in the middle of a property boom, or is that a property bubble? If you're looking to buy, to rent, or possibly buy to let, how do you know you're getting the right price in a property that you really want that's really affordable? To answer some of those questions, I have three people with me. They are Jeff Bathija, who looks after sales for Andrews in London, Ellie Donaghy, who looks after letting and management in what I suppose we could call the Royal County of Gloucestershire, and Mark Pitt, who's a senior mortgage consultant. Jeff, let's begin with you in London, where it has been absolutely bonkers. People are saying the property market is absolutely booming. Others say it's a bubble. What do you think?
I think it's difficult to say at this time, Richard. I think what we are seeing in London is a lot of the pent-up demand from people in sort of 2009, 2010 who didn't move when the market was a lot softer, now being able to come back into the marketplace and looking to make those moves now. So that has fueled that demand. Whether it's a bubble or a boom is difficult to say, as I say. But what we do tend to see in London is every 10 years the property market works in cycles. And I think now we're certainly on the upward curve of that cycle at the moment.
Have you ever seen anything like it though?
Yes, I have back in 2007 and also before then in the early 2000s after we came out of the recession in the 90s. So this has worked in cycles in London certainly before.
Vince Cable, the business secretary, who's an economist by training and was right about the financial crash, says that this is a bubble, it is unsustainable.
As I say, I think that's difficult to say at the moment, and certainly in London, history has shown us that property prices every 10 years have at least doubled over the last 50 or 60 years. So I think this is part of that process.
Ellie, what impact is this having on lettings?
There's a lot of demand from tenants still. People can't afford the deposits, or they don't want to get into the sort of purchasing of properties because they're afraid it's a bubble. As Jeff says, it's hard to tell, is it not a bubble? But tenant demand is still massive.
And what about those who are thinking perhaps of investing in buy-to-let? Is this the sort of market that landlords want to see? Probably they're being put off by the prices, aren't they?
Yeah, I think people are a little bit wary, perhaps more so than they have been, but we still do have the investors coming through, and there are still the sort of markets and areas that you can invest in where there will be capital growth and there is still a lot of tenant demand.
But surely with Help to Buy, you must be seeing people who in the past have been tenants and letting now thinking, okay, let's bite the bullet, we've got Help to Buy, we're going to purchase. Is that not sort of reduced it a little?
I would say probably not. We have seen that, and we have seen that come through. However, there's always new people coming to the market who, younger people, students who are now graduates, they don't want to buy immediately, they still want to rent. And we do have families who unfortunately were put off by the recession and they're now afraid to get back in because is it a bubble? They are still afraid.
Mark, interest rates are still at historically low levels, but they have been for many years now. Has something happened which has led to this sort of kicking off and the market suddenly booming?
Again, like Jeff and Ellie were saying, whether it's a boom or whether it's a bubble is yet to be seen. As far as interest rates are concerned, no, they have been relatively low and low for a good number of years now. It's reflective in the competition from lenders in the marketplace to actively seek borrowing and to provide the lending. So it's likely to continue, certainly for the foreseeable future.
They've burnt their fingers in the past, lenders. Have those lessons been learned? Are they being more sensible now?
Certainly what we are seeing coming out from lenders now is a greater need for clients and customers to provide further information and documentation to support their application, and that is being looked at more closely by a lender when they are making their decision to actually lend, yes.
Jeff, looking in London, as I said, that's leading the market as it always does. When you've got a situation when the market is so buoyant, what do you do as a potential buyer when you find that prices are going up literally weekly, that there are open houses? How do you know that you're getting value for money? How do you know you're even remotely going to be getting to a vendor with a decent offer?
Yeah, I mean, that's difficult to say whether you're getting value for money. What I would always advise is that if you see a property that you like and you want to go for it, then you should purchase it, because in London, certainly for the long-term investment, you're always likely to see that investment rise. Whether you're making the right offer, then it's you are reliant on taking advice from your estate agent to give you guidance as to whether you're pitching your offer in the right place or
But
not.
cynics would say the estate agent's always going to say, yes, go and buy it, it's good value, you need to buy it.
Yeah, I mean that's where we have to have a buyer obviously making their own research into the market and doing their own. It's very much buyer beware in certain cases, because the agent is acting in the best interest in the vendor. However, the agent does have a balance to play between the both parties and making sure that their buyer is looked after as well. But it's important that a buyer does their own research into where they're buying and the longer term investment.
One development which seems to be all the rage at the moment is this idea of an open house and sealed bids. How's that come about?
Simply because there is such a demand in London for certain properties that it isn't worth a vendor taking the time to necessarily individually view the property to each individual buyer. It might be more time efficient and also more price efficient for the vendor to show the property to multiple buyers at the same time, thereby creating a competitive environment and receiving the best price.
But is that demand coming from the person who's selling, or is it coming from you guys, because it makes life a lot easier for you?
I think it's really the demand is there from the buyers, and the agent and the vendor are working together to get the best possible outcome for the vendor when selling that particular property.
I've recently experienced open houses, and as a potential buyer, I hated it. It was an absolute zoo. Yeah. You're traipsing around, tripping over people, and it's kind of embarrassing, and you're looking at the people and looking at the cars they arrive in. You're thinking, you know, could I outbid them? It's not a nice experience, is it?
No, and there have been examples of potential buyers fighting on the front lawn after open views, and that sort of thing does happen and is commonplace, but it's the nature of the market that we're in at the moment. So naturally vendors want to maximise their returns.
And Ellie, what's it like now for you in looking after the county, the current market with letting? Is fighting in tooth and claw as it is in the residential buying side, or is it a bit more civilised?
I don't think it's quite as aggressive. Definitely, we haven't seen anyone fighting on any lawns, definitely not. But there is still a lot of competition out there. We do still do some slight open house things, not probably as aggressively as it is in the sales department. But we've got so much demand. The tenant demand is there. People are afraid to buy. People can't afford to buy. So the tenant demand is really still there.
And typically, what are they looking for when they're looking to rent a property?
They're looking for value for money. Rents have dramatically increased over the last, say, 5 years from when the recession has come about. So they're looking for value for money. Location is always key, but they want a property that's up together. There are still some perhaps rogue landlords out there who don't take maintenance and upkeep of their property as serious as they should. So that is a key thing for tenants.
And who are the majority? What's the majority sort of demographic who's looking to rent at the moment? Is it young professionals? Is it families? Is it single people?
I don't think that there's one market. I think it's everybody. Throughout Andrews, we deal with anybody from families to student lets, sharers to couples. There seems to be demand for every kind of market.
And Mark, money is clearly easier now. You're saying that lessons probably have been learnt. So typically, what is the sort of loan to value that we're getting for residential properties?
Certainly, the majority of the market will start with interest rates with a 10% deposit. There are some lenders who will do it as low as 5%. And Help to Buy coming in as well has made that more readily available, either through the new build part of it, or alternatively the second part of the scheme, which was recently launched at the end of last year. However, the rule is still the same. The greater the deposit you have, the lower the interest rate which the lender will provide you with. So if you are able to get to a 15% deposit or a 20% or a 25%, then your interest rate that you could have will be substantially lower, and that will have a knock-on effect on the monthly payments and, of course, the affordability for that client.
What impact has Help to Buy had?
It certainly brought more people to the front of thinking that they could now have a property. It is still in the early stages, and both the housing association people dealing with it are learning, developer is learning, we are learning, the lender is learning. But there are greater people now thinking they can get an affordable property and get back onto the housing ladder.
But ironically, in being able to do that, they're also inflating the prices.
Not necessarily, no. Just because there are more people looking for a property, it's all about the economies of scale of supply and demand. And where you have the supply and you have the demand, then the prices will find their own level.
Do you see the changes that the Chancellor made in his budget, whereby people can access their lump sum pension funds now? They don't necessarily have to buy an annuity. Do you think that's going to have an impact on the market?
Certainly it'll have an impact with regard to lenders. Lenders are already looking at their affordability model, especially for people who are slightly older and looking to have bought a property to complement their retirement income, where people are saying they have a pension and would get a lump sum and will pay a lump sum off. The changes that the Chancellor has now announced, lenders are going to look at that very carefully over the next few months to say, is that a model that we need to take into account when dealing with affordability and our ability to lend, or is it something that we don't necessarily have to be overly concerned about? Since the announcement, it's too early to understand which way lenders will look at that and what effect that will have.
Ellie, as Mark was saying, it's early days, but do you anticipate that you're going to have a whole new generation of potential new landlords, people who've retired or retiring, and are going to use their pension lump sum to go out and invest in a property rather than buying an annuity?
I think we will. We've seen inquiries from people, in the last few days that do we think this is a good thing to do. As Jeff said, we're not sure how the housing market's going. But yes, if you've got that lump sum invest, the rents have dramatically increased, so have the property prices. Will they come down? They may, but I anticipate they will still re-rise again. So yeah, it's definitely a place to be with the tenant demand. I couldn't recommend it enough.
And I guess, Jeff, you're going to have the same sort of impact again. If people are going to do that, it's going to push prices up in the residential sector, regardless of how they spend it, whether they just want to buy it as a second home or rent it out to a child or a grandchild or something. It's likely to have an impact on prices.
Yeah, I mean, for sure it's going to fuel demand, which will push prices up even higher, I would imagine.
And are we seeing, traditionally it's been the case that, London leads and the regions follow. Are we beginning to see a spread out from London already to the likes of where we are now in Bristol?
Yeah, I think the rising market is not specific to London. The property market generally tends to move in cycles, and we're certainly seeing the upward curve of that at the moment across the country as a whole currently.
When did it start to pick up?
Well, in London we probably saw that probably about 2 years ago, and in the rest of the country I would imagine in the last 12 months. Speaking to my colleagues who work in and around the country, they've sort of noticed a pick-up in prices over the last 12 months or so.
Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors said in the spring that they thought that increases would continue probably for the next 6 years, average about 6% increase. Do you have any issues with that?
I think it's likely that prices will continue to increase. As I said earlier, I think we're on the upward trend at the moment, certainly. So if it's a cyclical thing, then we're certainly on the increasing side of that.
And for somebody who's thinking, now's the time to move, need to put the house on the market, is it a good time or should they wait?
I think it's always, there's never a bad time. If you have to move, then I wouldn't wait for the market to increase, because there's no guarantee that it will. So I think it's really down to personal circumstance. If you have to move because of a job or a birth or a divorce or a marriage, whichever it may be, then there's never a good or bad time.
Mark, you and I can remember when interest rates were at 15%. Surely there must be a worry, particularly for younger people now who are used to historically low levels of interest rates, that when they pick up, they're going to really catch a cold?
I can understand people viewing that and seeing where that's going. I think from the days when we had those kind of interest rates, properties since then have increased in fourfold. And I agree with what Jeff was saying. The property market tends to go in cycles, and we're starting on an upward curve of that cycle, and it will keep refreshing itself. Interest rates, though, have been low and have been low now for a number of years, and will continue to remain low for some time to come. So whenever somebody like myself is talking with a client, we're not only dealing with where interest rates are now, but we're also dealing with what happens when they come off of that rate, what could they go on to, and actually having an interest rate perhaps 1 or 2% above that. So it would be quite irresponsible to focus just on the interest rate of today without making sure that a client would be affordable in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time as well.
Elliot, if I said to you and your generation, how do you fancy interest rates in double figures, what would your reaction be?
Well, I don't remember those times.
Mark's showing his age there now, isn't he?
Of yourself and Mark. I would probably be slightly afraid for myself, as I haven't been through that market. You know, you have to roll with the times, and it's something that we would embrace. And I feel people of perhaps my generation would embrace that, but it's not something I remember.
Or me.
Ellie, I'd have thought that you must now be losing tenants who are saying, you know, why am I paying £700-800 a month to a landlord? I'm now going to go for a mortgage. That must be happening, surely.
There are some tenants, yes, who that is happening with, and they can get on with the deals that Mark has spoken about. However, there are tenants that are hesitant to get into the sales market, you know, to get onto the property ladder. But there's also those tenants who just don't want to. You know, they don't want to be fighting on the lawn, as Jeff perhaps suggested earlier.
It's good fun.
No, they don't want to be in that market there. They're in the rental market. They pay their rent. If something goes wrong, they can take that up with the landlord. The maintenance can be done. They just want a hassle-free living situation.
There is talk now that there is a generation that will always be happy to be tenants. It's not in my generation, but you think there will always be now a generation who are more than happy just to pay rental, and that could go on forever.
Absolutely. It's been seen across most of Europe before. That's a very European thing, to be in the rental market. And, you know, as being British, our house is our castle, and I think that will still continue, but I do also think there's a generation of renters as such who don't want to be in that. Yeah, definitely.
If the market average sort of interest rate in 4 or 5 years' time was 5.5%, how would you feel about that?
I think there'll always be the demand for rentals anyway. I think that may frighten some of the younger first-time buyers, as I said before, the graduates, the people who are just getting into their careers. So I think the tenant demand will still be there. But I think with the pensions and things like that, the demand for people to buy, to invest, to let out, I think it's always still going to be there. This market, it went up during the recession. You know, we've not seen a massive decrease since then. So I think the rental market remains strong regardless of the interest rates. I think it might just change the demographic of who is looking to buy, who is looking to rent, but I don't think it will change the market as a whole.
Jeff, is the issue of rising interest rates, which they surely will over time, is that the elephant in the room that people are trying to ignore as they have the bun fight and making sealed bids and all sorts of crazy offers? Are they going to catch a cold 3-4 years down the line?
I think it's difficult to say, Richard, but I don't think it's of a concern to most buyers at the moment, because interest rates, as Mark said, have been historically low, and I think even if they do rise, they will still be at a very low level compared to the times that you were both alluding to some years ago when they were up at 15-16%. So that isn't, at the moment, too much of a concern for buyers.
And if you are looking to buy now, Jeff, what sort of things do you need to do so that you're in the best position, so that if the property that you really want comes up and you think, yes, I can afford it, how do you make sure you're at the head of the queue?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Rich, and I think the key thing is not to wait for the property to come up before you start making those arrangements about thinking about putting yourself at the front of the queue. I think the key is to do it before you've seen the property. So speak to somebody like Mark, an expert financial broker who can help you organise a mortgage beforehand. Speak to a solicitor to organise the conveyancing side of things. So you are ahead of the game. When you see the property that you like and you want to put your offer in, you can put yourself in a very, very strong position with the vendor at that point.
And if, heaven forfend, you're in the sealed bid process, what do you do when you see a place that you like, that you know the price is going to be around, say, 350,000? What do you put in the envelope?
I think you just make the best bid that you think possible and what you feel the property is worth to you. And remember, Richard, it's not always about the highest price being the best offer, because for a vendor will have certain timing needs, so you may be able to meet those more closely than someone else who's put in a higher bid than you. So really it's just about making the best bid possible and putting yourself in the best situation and the best light in terms of the vendor, explain to them that you've got things ready in terms of the mortgage and the legal process as well.
And Mark, are you finding that people are doing what Jeff is advising, i.e. that they're getting ready to go so that when they find the place, they hit the button and they can start the process, or are they coming to you in a panic saying, you've got to help me, I need to borrow 150 grand or what have you, because I've found the house of my dreams or whatever?
I think when you look at society as a whole, there is an element that fits into every box, and every single day we're seeing some people who are market ready, if you like, as Jeff was saying, and there's other people who have done nothing at all and they found their property. Where the market is at this moment in time, the advice would be become market ready. You know, take advice from somebody who deals with the whole of the market. Look at your own situation. As I was saying earlier, lenders are requiring more and more information, which is protracting the actual process, and therefore to get an answer can take a little while. Therefore, if you've done that up front and you've got the answer, then you see the property, you are in an excellent position and ready to go with it, and may put yourself ahead of other people who are also interested in that property.
Mark, Ellie, Jeff, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.